Seventh International Conference on Philosophy and Meaning of Life will be taking place in Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada. It'll be on 25th of June to 27th of June 2025, so quite a few days yet to go. The deadline for submissions of abstracts for the conference is on 15th of January 2025, and registrations for attendance will start early March next year. Among the keynote speakers is Ido Lando, who was also interviewed on Exploring Anti-Natalism podcast a while ago. The subject of the conference is not directly on antinatalism, but it's not a peripheral topic to antinatalism either. I mean, the subject of meaning of life intersects deeply with many arguments and aspects of antinatalism. John Stuart Mill was an English philosopher. He was known for utilitarianism, among many other things. Utilitarianism is the idea of promoting the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Peter Singer also follows a similar path, but he applies these principles beyond just our own species. So, utilitarianism is mainly focused on end results or consequences of certain actions. On the other hand, deontology is focused on the action itself in deciding whether it is right or wrong, independently of its consequences. Immanuel Kant is most famously associated with the ethics of deontology. But these two men, Kant and Mill, died in 19th century, so that's not the news. The news is that a YouTube channel called Brain in a Vat has brought them back. Through ChatGPT AI, they had a very interesting discussion on ethics of abortion with these two philosophers. They started with John Stuart Mill. He was pro-choice by today's terms, but Immanuel Kant seemed more like pro-life about abortion. John Stuart Mill even responded back to Kant in the discussion. It was almost like they were debating with each other just to the hosts of the channel. But let's not confuse these two with political crowds about abortion. These are deep thinkers and they have some very good arguments. For anyone interested in philosophy, ethics, antinatalism, or abortion, this was a treat to listen to. There was an interview of David Benatar, The Predicament of Existence, David Benatar on antinatalism. Now, it is not a new interview, just a re-upload of the one in 2022, but still it was nice little refresher of Benatar's arguments. Now, a lot of Benatar's work is focused on humans and human procreation. So you might think that Benatar is an anthropocentric antinatalist, but that's not the case. One of the important features of this interview was Benatar's views on non-human animals. Let's see what he said.
Would you also advocate the non-existence of non-human animals, indeed all sentient beings?
I do indeed. I think that my arguments apply to non-human animals that are sentient as well. When I look at the natural world, independent of human beings, there's just a vast amount of suffering. I think about the billions of animals that are being eaten alive by other animals every minute. It's an horrific world in which we live. These horrors are often kept from us, or we don't see them. They're hidden, they're obscure, but they're there. And I think it would be better if we lived on a planet, or not if we lived, if there were a planet in which there were no sentient beings. Mars is better than Earth.
And while I was recording this, there was one more interview of David Benatar on the same channel, Philosophy Overdose. This was also a re-upload from earlier this year. And again, interestingly, Benatar mentions the relationship of veganism and antinatalism.
I do think there's a connection between veganism and antinatalism. The precise connection is open to some debate and discussion, but both, I think, are views that seek to minimize suffering. So one argument that's often given in favor of eating meat is that if humans didn't eat animals, those animals that they eat would never have been created in the first place. And so actually we're doing them a favor by creating them and then killing them and eating them. And I find this a really obnoxious argument for many reasons. I mean, one of them is that the animals that are brought into existence are often brought into an existence of extreme suffering if they reared in factory farms. And so by no stretch of the imagination could it be said that we're benefiting them. But even if an animal were to have a relatively good quality of life and then have its life terminated early, I don't think that we're doing that animal a favor any more than if we were to create a human in order to eat it. If we were to create a human in order to eat him or her, we would be doing a very serious harm by killing that human being. And I don't think that we would say we've done a net benefit to that person by creating and killing them rather than by not creating them in the first place.
Fernando Olszewski is the creator of two YouTube channels, Exile do Metaphysico in Portuguese, sorry if I'm saying that name wrong, and Metaphysical Exile in English. Over there, he puts faceless video essays themed on pessimistic philosophy. He also has a website, metaphysicalexile.com, listing his essays in text. The news is he was interviewed by Lawrence on Lawrence's channel. It was about his master's thesis, Pessimism and Gnosis, Schopenhauer, Chioran, and the appropriation of anti-cosmic religions. The title itself raises questions about what is anti-cosmic religion and what has that to do with Schopenhauer and Chioran, and what has all of that to do with antinatalism. Fernando explains all of this and more in the interview. KNB is a very good YouTube channel on topics of philosophy. He has over 55,000 subscribers. He put out a video claiming to be a newish argument for antinatalism because no one else has given this argument yet. His main point is we all aspire to have an ideal life. But what is an ideal life? Can you even define it? You can't even define what the length of that ideal life should be. Should it be infinite or should it be some finite arbitrary number? Any option you take, you find problems with it. And so the only ideal lifespan can be zero, and that is life not started. This was his main argument. Now, he acknowledges that this is not a full argument. It is not clear, for example, why ideal life should be a criteria to start with. But the point directs us towards antinatalism anyway. The Conspiracy Against Human Race is a non-fiction book by Thomas Ligotti. The book was published in 2010, so that's not a news. A new podcast was published summarizing the central ideas of the book. Just very briefly, the conspiracy is a metaphorical conspiracy against humans due to their consciousness. So, consciousness is the reason for their suffering. Along with this point, the podcast also mentions other works by Thomas Ligotti. It's a 13-minute podcast and should help you if you haven't read the book yet, but it sounded repetitive, so the actual content might just be like 5 or 6 minutes long. Danny Shine is an antinatalist of his own type. He goes out on streets spreading the message of not reproducing in very street-like way. This time he was at Marble Arch in London asking a group of Christians to not have kids. Now generally Christians, like many other religions, are told to be fruitful and multiply. But Danny's point was Jesus didn't have any kids and Christians should follow him. Now, all of this sounds just like some comedy or maybe even nonsense, but this is Danny's unique way of doing antinatalism outreach. And I understand, I mean, we can't go with Benatar's asymmetry placards out on the streets. Talking of street outreaches, there was one more in Japan. Antinatalism Japan held signs about antinatalism in Japanese on 10th of November. Asagi Hozumi, I think, is the organizer of these outreaches, and I will include the link in the description. So, in case you happen to be in Japan and would want to do some constructive antinatalism activism, you might want to check it out. One more news from Japan, there's an article in Japanese. I have translated a version here. Is having children bad? Antinatalism is spreading online amid declining birth rates. We asked those involved. And among those who they actually asked were Masahiro Morioka and Asagi Hozumi. David Benatar's asymmetry, extinction, suicide, and such philosophical topics are discussed briefly in the article. Asagi Hozumi's organization for antinatalism activism was also mentioned. The translated name was Agonist Association. I'm not sure if that is the correct translation. Hozumi described what they do in Japan for antinatalism and said, our association believes that creatures that are presumed to be capable of feeling pain, such as mammals as well as fish and insects, should not be created equally and should eventually become extinct. So, pretty powerful ideas there. The conversation had nice little article explaining 4B movement. You might have already heard about this. The movement started in South Korea as a feminist offshoot. The idea is women should give up on four things: no marriage, no childbirth, no dating, and no sex. I think the sex part is focused primarily on heterosexual relationships. The B in 4B stands for the same terms in Korean language. After Donald Trump's re election, the movement has spilled over to America, or at least it is trying to. It's not clear how far it has actually spread over there. The conversation article is a good primer of all these aspects. But I want to point out one thing. Just because no childbirth is part of this movement, some people have associated this with antinatalism. As antinatalists, we should welcome no childbirth part of 4B movement. We should also welcome the fight for justice for women. But there are more differences with antinatalism than there are similarities of this 4B movement. Whether you have sex, whether you marry or date, has nothing to do with antinatalism. Antinatalism is concerned about bringing or not bringing new lives into this world. 4B movement seems to be more about existing people. Now, I know that misanthropic argument for antinatalism is also concerned about suffering of existing beings, but that suffering is as a result of bringing a new child into existence. 4B movement, on the other hand, is a reaction to patriarchal domination within a given society. We have seen many trends come and go in the past. For example, we saw great resignation, quiet quitting, lying flat, and so on. Whether 4B movement is one of those trends or not, only time will tell. But antinatalism has been here since ancient Greeks, Hindus, and Buddhists, and so on. Two articles from New York Times to note. One, child-free ban in Russia. Its birth rate falling. Russia targets child-free lifestyles. The State Duma, or lower house of parliament, unanimously approved a bill that would ban any form of propaganda promoting refusal to have children. That would include material on the internet, in media outlets, in movies, and in advertising that portrays child free lifestyles as attractive. So, yeah, that's the news. The child free ban is almost there in Russia. Another one is about grandparents, or actually those who want to be grandparents. The unspoken grief of never becoming a grandparent. This was a series of interviews of those who want to be grandparents but could not because their children have decided not to have their own children. These people yearned to be grandparents but also understood that their children had their own decisions to make. 14th of November is celebrated as Children's Day in India. It has some political background to it, but let's ignore that part and focus on the fact that it is celebrated as Children's Day. You are supposed to think about children's well being on that day, and of course, then along with that, you ought to think about suffering of the children. Not many people do. And so on this day, a lot of nonsense goes on. Like, people spam each other on WhatsApp congratulating about Children's Day and so on. A lot of nonsense goes on. One of such nonsense is what I'm going to respond to. There is a channel called Pocket Change. It has, as you can see, more than 100,000 subscribers, so a significant channel. And they created a video, Parenthood or Child Free Life, question mark, kids or no kids, Children's Day special. Are we on the same page? And I'm going to point out a crucial missing piece in this, considering that this is Children's Day. What that piece is, we will see. But let's first look at what they have done. This is going to be a debate of six people. If I can bring up the screen here of those six people, these are the six people. The on the left hand side here on the screen are three people who have children, at least one child they have reproduced, and they are on the side that we should have children. On this side are the people who don't want to have children or identify themselves as some shade of child free. So they debate on different questions about having or not having children. And then the format is that after that question is discussed, there is a verdict by some three judges. I'm not going to go over those judgments, those are not very valuable judgments. But I'm going to look at only a few questions which were discussed here. And then we'll come to the missing piece, which was that missing piece really makes all of this ironical. So we will see. The questions that were discussed, we can see here. I hope you can see. I have like zoomed it quite a lot. We can see that we have, is having kids a societal obligation? Do kids complicate life? A fulfilling life without kids? Can you have a fulfilling life without kids? And then motherhood compromising women's careers. These are the four questions. I am only going to look at a couple of them of these questions. Let's first start with, is having kids a societal obligation?
क्या बच्चे करना एक सोसाइटल ऑब्लिगेशन है?
Yes.
So I want to mention this. This is like Hindi/English mixed video. So sometimes there are sentences in Hindi also. I am going to stick to English, and wherever they speak in English, there are subtitles which you can see anyway. So the first question they have already asked is it a societal obligation to have kids? Let's see what they say.
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. I mean, सोसाइटल ऑब्लिगेशन तो है ही. हम बॉम्बे की बात करें या बॉम्बे के बाहर बात करें, छोटे छोटे गाँव में फैमिली से ज्यादा प्रेशर आता है बच्चा करने के लिए. दादा दादी को छोटा पोता या पोती चाहिए खिलाने के लिए. इवन इन मेट्रो सिटीज इट्स नॉट जस्ट द सोसाइटी, इट्स ऑल्सो द पार्टनर. आई मीन पति पत्नी है, पति को शायद नहीं चाहिए क्योंकि दे आर आदमी होते हैं, वो उनको प्रोवाइड, आई मीन दे हैव दैट फीलिंग ऑफ बीइंग अ प्रोवाइडर. So they feel that they want to be financially stable before getting into like parenthood and stuff. But there's a biological clock for women, and उनको motherly instinct आ जाती है, तो they want to have a child. Most of the time, the guy has to give in. तो कहीं ना कहीं societal pressure भी है.
This thing about motherly instinct as a pressure, I'm not fully convinced. I mean, there are studies done whether the instinct is actually an instinct or whether it is social programming of some sort, whether it is a social construct in humans. Of course, there is an argument made that in case of animals, this sort of instinct actually develops after the animal becomes a mother, the female animal becomes a mother, and not before. Before that, it's a sexual activity and then they become mother. Similar then must be the case in humans, but this sort of instinct is brought up because of social conditioning. There are some studies talking about it. I'm not going to cite those studies now, but there is this sort of argument being made.
पार्टनर से भी थोड़ा बहुत प्रेशर आता है. सो आई थिंक या
मुझे ऐसे इसमें ऐड करना है. तो साइटल प्रेशर इज लाइक मैं, मेरा पार्टनर, पार्टनर के पेरेंट्स, पेरेंट्स के रिलेटिव्स, वो बाजू वाला उसका रिलेटिव, इसका बच्चा हुआ है या नहीं, उनको ज्यादा पड़ी है. तो बहुत ज्यादा सोसाइटल प्रेशर. आई डोंट अग्री टू इट एट ऑल.
Okay, we're going to come to this lady in green shirt, but I definitely agree that there's a lot of societal pressure, especially women, but I don't think it's only on women. Part of it is we feel a lot of pressure without acknowledging that we feel that pressure. One of the evidence to this fact is growing IVF industry in India. Yeah, it's an irony. India is the most populous nation in the world. The IVF is an industry in India and it is growing a lot. Part of the reason, of course, the contribution also comes from foreign people, like people in developed world where treatments like IVF are costly, come to India to get these treatments. So there's a medical tourism factor there, but there is also equal contribution by Indians themselves because they feel the pressure to have children. So people who can't have children are under tremendous pressure to have children, and that they are actually fueling this growth of IVF industry. That is a general evidence, and we're going to look at specific evidences also, but let's see what this lady has to say.
I'm talking purely about myself, people around me in Bombay. यार यहाँ पर हम एक पार्टनर के लिए नहीं किसी से पूछते, करियर चॉइस के लिए नहीं पूछते.
First of all, to select the scope of only in Mumbai and that to urban women, like educated women, that's a very small minority in a country like India. So I don't know, with the sense of confidence this woman is speaking, her argument is not that relevant anyway. And even on top of that, I'm going to show that what she's talking about is not correct.
बच्चे के लिए कौन हमें फोर्स कर सकता है, मतलब मजाल है.
मैं थोड़ा सा इसमें डिफर करूंगा. आई मीन दिस इज नॉट दिस एरिया का डिबेट, बट आई एम जस्ट सेइंग दैट प्रेशर तो है, चाहे वो पढ़े लिखे खानदान में हो, रेस खानदान में हो, चाहे मिडिल क्लास में हो या लोअर मिडिल क्लास में हो, दैट प्रेशर इज ऑलवेज देयर. रिलेटिव्स.
So let's have a look at what kind of pressure people feel in India, and especially women feel to have children. I'm going to cite some studies, some anecdotal evidences, some articles, and blogs. I think one of the best indicators to gauge what kind of pressure people feel for having children is to see how people who can't have children are treated in society. And this is the blog which is on King's College London's website. The title is The Precarious Lives of Barren Women in Rural India. This was written recently, like in 2023, August 2023, not a long ago, by somebody called Kanchan Pandey, and she's talking about rural women here. She gives some examples of how infertile women, are actually treated in India. She says, growing up as a child, I witnessed my aunt who could not conceive a child discriminated against through this practice. The stigma around infertility as an illness has resulted in mushrooms of fertility clinics surrounding big and small cities in northern India. What I was talking about, this sort of stigma is actually fueling IVF industry in India, which sell hope of parenthood. The social construction of infertility has stripped women of agency to participate with full capacity in women's gatherings, in auspicious ceremonies such as wedding rituals or Hindu practices of celebrating women's pregnancy. The very notion that if a woman cannot reproduce, she is deemed incomplete and defective, thereby also causing bad omen to fertile women. Shaming such women who cannot give birth further makes it unthinkable for other women not to have a child. Having a child becomes both a duty and a measure of female honor. It teaches women that their worth depends on whether they can reproduce, or even more, if they can reproduce a male heir. Now, as a result of all of this, many societies have come to idealize the mother and demonize those who cannot reproduce. In doing so, it imposes social and familiar surveillance over women's body. Barren women are thought to carry negative energy, which societies consider detrimental to pregnant women or women of reproductive age. Such beliefs are prevalent in the south as in the northern part of the country. Their nazar or glance, nazar actually here means their stare, not just glance, but their stare, is believed to cause harm to the child. The stare of barren women, of infertile women who could not have child. Their stare, just staring at them, just their vision, is believed to cause harm to the child and the expecting mother, and therefore it burdens women to reproduce to attain respectability in public spaces. In such norms, women's bodies are in prison of motherhood, where fertility is a precondition of respect and dignity for women. I mean, I can go on and on and on about this. This is a very good article about how women are treated who don't have children, and indicating the kind of pressure that women and people in general have on having children in India. Now you might argue that this author Kanchan Pandey is talking about her aunt while Kanchan was growing up, so these problems were a previous generation and now things might have changed. One thing, things don't change so fast in a country like India, such a big country. Change is extremely slow. Second thing, these women who can't have children are still here. They are facing these problems. Another evidence is, this is a Wikipedia page. Let me scroll at the top here to show. This is a page listing pregnancies over 50, the pregnancies of women who are over 50. And this is ordered by from 50 onwards as the age grows. I'm going to scroll down right at the bottom to see which are the oldest women who have had children. Okay, so if I scroll down, 56, 57, 58, blah blah blah, 60, we have reached 62. Right now we are going like in 60s, 70s. So the oldest woman to have a child is 73-year-old. This is from India. The second oldest woman from India, third oldest woman from India, then an exception of fourth spot, fifth oldest woman from India, sixth oldest woman from India, and then we get other countries. So, of the top six women in the list of oldest women to have children, and these women are in their 70s, okay, of the top six of those women, five are from India. What does that tell you? That tells you the kind of pressure these women have. These women are from a previous generation. You can argue they're in 70s. They were in 70s when they had their child, their first child. And this is as late as, by the way, September 2019, not very long ago. And they are having children because of the pressure that they feel. Of course, their husbands are also um, probably in 70s or even 80s. All of these pregnancies, not most, all of these pregnancies have been conceived through IVF and through the assisted reproductive technologies. Nothing is natural. It's not their own eggs either. They just have to want to go through the ritual of passing on a child through their body to get a validation in their society. That is the pressure that these women are facing. But you might argue that this is rural India. What about women in cities? So here's another scientific statistical study of women in Mumbai. women and infertility in pronatalist culture, mental health in slums of Mumbai. It says, as a pronatalist society, infertility is particularly problematic in India, causing stigma, shame, and blame, especially for women. Infertility consequences for women include discrimination, social exclusion, and abandonment, putting them at high risk of mental health distress. Furthermore, mental health is highly stigmatized and specialized care is largely available, which means women are first of all stigmatized because they can't have a child. That causes mental health issues in them, and mental health issues in themselves are stigmatized. And despite the cultural importance of childbearing, research on infertility distress and resulting mental health sequela is lacking, particularly among low income women. This is the story of slum dwelling women in Mumbai, one of the top cities in India. You might still argue that I am referring to women in slums. So now I have a woman, a very well respected woman living in Mumbai. Shabana Azmi, if you don't know Shabana Azmi, she is a very fine actress or actor, whatever you call it these days, in Hindi cinema. Not Bollywood. She's acted in Bollywood movies also, but she's not the typical Bollywood kind of actor. She's acted in Hindi cinema, which are genuinely art films. She's a very well respected person in her own industry and as well as in society at large. Money, there's no problem for her. She's rich. She's in kind of similar situation as Kamala Harris in the sense that she has not had biological children herself for whatever reason, but she has stepchildren from her husband's previous marriage. And she is talking about child-free lifestyle here in one of the most prominent newspapers in India, Indian Express. And the headline is Shabana Hazmi on not having kids. She says society makes you feel incomplete when women choose child-free lives. She's talking about society's pressure. This is Shabana Azmi. If Shabana Azmi is saying that, this is the most cosmopolitan, metropolitan, whatever you call it, most urban woman that we can get. She is a very good representative of women in general, by the way, like she's a feminist, and she's saying this. So we have all sorts of evidences to accept that women have great pressure of having children, and along with that, their partners and therefore men. So people have humongous pressure of having children in general all over in all countries and also in India. So whatever this woman in green shirt is saying is absolute nonsense.
करूंगा आई मीन दिस इज नॉट अ दिस एरिया का डिबेट बट आई एम जस्ट सेइंग दैट प्रेशर तो है चाहे वो पढ़े लिखे खानदान में हो रेस खानदान में हो चाहे मिडिल क्लास में हो या लोअर मिडिल क्लास में हो दैट प्रेशर इज ऑलवेज देयर
रिलेटिव्स पूछते हैं कि शादी कब कर रहे हो और जब हो जाती है तो बच्चा
कब फिर दूसरा कब कर रहे हो?
लेकिन इवेंचुअली लाइक आई थिंक थिंग्स आर चेंजिंग नाउ इवेंचुअली ये एक कपल का डिसीजन होना चाहिए आल्सो it should come down to a women's choice.
Now, today, after COVID and so many things, when I know that my husband wants a breather space and everything, I have the sensibility to take a stand in front of my parents and my in-laws, saying that this is not going to happen till the time my husband and I both are on board for this thing. For, having a
And
child.
absolutely, this is today's woman. This is
But
exactly
This is not today's women. These are minority urban people having privilege and having freedom and having liberty, having privilege of getting educated and all of that. This is not today's women. This is not a representative of Indian women or women in general all over the world by any chance. These people are completely disconnected from reality.
I genuinely have a question to you. Now you said that you've been married, you want kids, and he doesn't want kids. So how does that work?
See, firstly, me and my husband, we have a friendship. We respect each other's perspectives. And I don't think कि एक बच्चा होना ना होना is going to put a question mark on my marriage.
Isn't it something that will affect your happiness? Because you definitely want to be a mother. He doesn't
they're
want to
so
be a father.
mature to talk it out. Then
No, it's
how?
not.
Figure out a way, bro.
Yeah,
I think this is true. This is happening. This is more of a child-free subject actually than anti-natalism. There is an increase in urban people in in not having children. The fertility rates are dropping and so on. But this is very urban phenomenon. This is minority, really. The kind of casual attitude these people are wearing on this subject is um, s- annoying, to put it mildly.
या हम अपने आप को चेंज कर सकते हैं, हम हमारी पार्टनर के साथ क्या हो रहा है वो चेंज कर सकते हैं। ये प्रेशर ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ बोल के आ जाएगा, मैंने सुना दिया मेरे डैड मॉम डैड को, तो वो प्रेशर उनकी मेरी वाइफ से निकल जाएगा, क्योंकि वो सिर्फ एक जगह से नहीं आ रहा ना। वो कहीं फंक्शन में गई, मुझे नहीं पता किसने किसको क्या बोला, वो शायद मुझे बताएगी भी नहीं, क्योंकि वो एक जगह से नहीं आ रहा है, सोसाइटी से आ रहा है, कलेक्टिवली।
वो तो डील कर लेंगे सोसाइटी।
हाँ,
This is very true. I mean, most of the forces that sort of affect you from a societal point of view, you don't even know what the source are, where it is coming from, how it is coming. You don't even realize after it has affected you for a long time sometimes.
वो ये ना सोसाइटल प्रेशर से है, सो वही हम एग्री कर
We are on the same page.
So,
I am
societal
we
pressure.
are on the same page. There's several issues in the country. Doesn't mean अरे अंधेरी के एक रोड पर गड्ढा है, मैं अंधेरी से रास्ता ही मोड़ लेता हूँ, मैं जाऊंगा ही नहीं उस तरफ.
So this is just denial. She sort of now agrees that there is pressure. She's having a hard time accepting that there is pressure, which is, in my opinion, she's just giving up. Okay, I'm going to skip this judgment part. It's not very valuable. I want to directly jump on to another question of whether having children, whether it is required to have children to have a fulfilling life.
क्या बिना बच्चों के भी लाइफ फुलफिलिंग हो सकती है?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So can you have a fulfilling job if you're paid well?
Yeah.
Yes. What if you have a toxic boss? What if your work is like you're working crazy hours and you're just unhealthy? Just because you're getting paid well, it's a fulfilling job.
वेट करो पॉइंट
We are trained well.
टाइम में वेट करो क्या पॉइंट है?
No, the point being, the question is not valid. Like, I mean, of course, anyone can have whatever life they want without kids. Both the parties are happy, like who want kids and who don't want kids. But there is also research suggesting that who don't have kids are, the number of people is increasing by the day. People are traveling, people are moving around easily, they are making career choices easily. They don't have to think before making a decision. When there's a perspective of kids in picture, while taking these decisions, it becomes, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है ये सोचना कि अरे मेरा बच्चा है तो मुझे जॉब नहीं छोड़ना चाहिए, या मेरा बच्चा है तो मुझे यहाँ ट्रैवल नहीं करना चाहिए, बिकॉज ये इतनी बड़ी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है. पीपल आर नॉट फाइंडिंग इट फुलफिलिंग to have kids.
So this sort of gives a hint of what's missing piece here. We're talking about Children's Day here, and they're talking about fulfilling their own lives.
These things, so you guys, even when you're living alone, you think कि यार मेरी मेड चली जाएगी, मैं गोरेगांव से बोरीवली अगर चली जाऊंगी तो यार वहाँ पे मेरी मेड नहीं आएगी, ठीक है?
स्टेक्स इतना हाई नहीं होता ना?
Of course होता है. People.
This sort of argument is like, what they are saying is that if I have children, I will have to worry about a lot of things. But if I don't have children, I am relatively freer. And the point this person is missing is relatively. I have lesser responsibilities. I am freer to do whatever I want. He's arguing that, but no, you can't, you don't have absolute freedom. You still have some responsibilities. Of course, I do, but they're lesser than having a child.
You design your life around your child and around the things that add in your life and how you grow. And you design your life. And there is
Absolutely.
nothing that
You guys are comparing a kid to a job, but if it's a job,
Yeah.
then I think, that's the last thing you want to do.
No, we are comparing a kid with a situation you're
just
giving
have
us.
a
Say, for
question.
example, you have a dog, so you will have to wake up at 7 to take the dog for a round, right? So that's a responsibility you're adding onto your schedule.
Exactly.
You are taking
want that
leave.
responsibility.
I don't want that.
I don't get up at 7. I don't want that dog.
So
I don't get
basically,
So this is where the entire discussion just goes distracted. The question was, can you have a fulfilling life? Do you need to have kids to have a fulfilling life? And I think answer is no, you don't have to have kids to have a fulfilling life. I mean, there are so many fulfilled lives we can see. The Prime Minister of India right now has no kids. I'm not claiming that he's child free. Maybe he is childless, who knows? But he doesn't have kids. The leader of opposition in central government of India does not have kids. There have been many prime ministers in the past who have not had kids. APJ Abdul Kalam, which is who is a very well respected scientist, a late scientist now, and also was president of India. He was a scientist who designed missiles for India. Everybody knows that. And he did not have kids. There are so many people. Isaac Newton did not have kids. The list can go on and on. Lata Mangeshkar is number one singer probably of all time in India. She's now dead, but she didn't have kids. You could argue that I'm giving examples only of extraordinary people because those are the celebrities that we know. But we also know in our personal circles many people who don't have kids and who have had very fulfilling life. We also know people who have had kids and haven't had fulfilling lives. I also know people who have had kids and have regretted having them later on. There are, in fact, videos on YouTube and on internet about this. I also know some people who have had kids and then realized about antinatalism and now agree with antinatalism. There are many examples of that. Jim Crawford is one, Danny Shine is another one. Some of the founders of Childfree India are actually parents, they have had children and now are antinatalists, including their own children. So, this relationship of having a fulfilling life and having a child is not, first of all, it's not binary and it's not based on a necessary condition. You don't have to have kids to have fulfilling lives. The next question I'm going to skip anyway because it's about motherhood compromising women's career. The point is, they are having a video to celebrate or on the occasion of Children's Day. In the entire video of 19-20 minutes, no concern about suffering of the child was brought up. What about the child who is going to be brought up to for you to have your fulfilling lives and for you to have whatever desires that you have? What about that? I think it's I think completely ironical that a discussion of 20 minutes does not involve any aspect of bringing a child into this world. Maybe there was a reference one or two times somewhere here and there, and it was so scarce that I will have to search for that actually. So that was the irony. That's why antinatalism is so absent in countries like India. Nobody thinks about children that they're going to bring. They're only thinking about whether it's good for me or not. That is the problem.